Whether you're picking and grinning or just grinning, grab a drink, pull up a seat. It's time for Roots Music Rambler. Turn it up.
All right, so I saw a bunch of your pictures from the weekend at Railbird.
Yes.
Tell us all about it.
Oh my goodness. Going into Railbird, I would have told you that you would be hard pressed to find a festival that had such a stocked lineup in the, Americana country bluegrass space. Railbird definitely has a more Americana bend and more of a country bluegrass bend than some festivals out there. But oh my goodness, it lived up to the expectation. The acts were, for those of you who don't know, Railbird was this past weekend as we're recording this, early June. So the first weekend of June, Lexington, Kentucky. I think it's the fourth time they've had it. I was actually at the first one, missed the last two, but I went this year. And I went this year because this is basically the lineup. You had Chris Stapleton, Hosier, Noah Kahn, Marcus King, Brent Cobb, Turnpike Troubadours, Red Clay Strays, Dwight Yoakam, Counting Crows, Trampled by Turtles, Allison Russell, Lord Huron, Flatland Cavalry, Kip Moore. And that's just like the mid-tier and up. Like there were a bunch of others that are fantastic that I got to see as well. And I can't tell you, let me put it to you this way. Two things happened that will tell you how good of a festival it was. Number one, it was either raining or the sun was beating down on you. It wasn't hot necessarily. It was very humid. So it was either raining or the sun was beating down on you to the point you got sunburned. The whole time, nobody cared. Not a single person cared. We were wet. We were sloppy. We stunk. We were sunburned. We were tired. Nobody cared. We had a blast. So that's one. The second one was, and this is my highlight, I guess, of the whole show, although there were several. I walked back from the stage watching Marcus King live and the Marcus King Band live, and immediately booked tickets for the next Marcus King show that's close to me. That's how good he was.
Yeah.
Blew my face off.
Yeah.
Absolutely was the best live performance I have seen since watching Whitney Houston sing live in a room in 1987.
Oh, wow.
That's how good he was. It wasn't just his guitar playing, which is impeccable. His voice live is incredible, and his band is incredible, and they play their asses off, and it was amazing.
Sounds like it. Wow. I've not seen him live, but I know plenty of people who have, and they all say the same thing, that he is just tremendous.
So I not only immediately dialed up tickets for a show in Indianapolis in July. I bought one for my son. My son loves Marcus King too.
Oh, okay.
And I had been thinking, well, I should buy tickets to that indie show and we'll go. But Grant was going to come to Railbird. He got a new job and had to work. So we had to sell his ticket. He couldn't come.
Right.
And so I immediately was like, okay, I'm buying those tickets. When I saw Marcus live, I not only bought the tickets, I bought the VIP experience. I bought the VIP like bar experience, parking, the whole, I'm overloading everything on that night because I expect to have a blast. And we get a pre-show acoustic set from him.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I'm going all in on Marcus. This is in Indianapolis in the middle of July. I'm going all in on Marcus King. He's my new obsession. Watching him live is an experience.
Wow.
And
very nice.
And then I got to see Brent Cobb, who for some ungodly reason was the 1:00 opener on Sunday. He should have been the 7:00, opener before the big act. But because everybody was probably hungover from Saturday, I got right up close and was able to see Brent Cobb, up close, and that was awesome. I got to see Dwight Yoakam for the 6th time. If you were following the news over the weekend, though, Dwight got about halfway through his set, and he was doing a cover of Crazy Little Thing Called Love by Queen. Mm-hmm. and he started missing words. And he stopped playing his guitar and kind of leaned on his guitar a little bit. And he kept looking off to the side. And I thought there was something wrong with the sound at first, is what I thought was going on.
Yeah.
It's like he wasn't happy with the guitar and was looking for the guitar tech or something. And it turns out he made it through the song, but he was missing words. It was almost like, almost like a rapper, like 3 or 4 words would be there and he wouldn't say them. And then he would emphasize the last word of the line. And he was closing his eyes and he was leaning on his guitar. And I started to think something's wrong. And then he motioned for the guitar tech to come out after the song. The guitar tech comes over, hands him his other guitar, and Dwight puts his arm around him and leans on the guy, and they escorted him off stage.
Oh, wow.
And for about 2 minutes, we were freaked out.
Yeah, that's concerning.
We thought there was something really wrong. They came back a couple minutes later and announced, "Hey, everybody, Dwight got overheated. He'll be back out in just a second. Hang tight." And apparently he had some heat exhaustion.
Sure.
He came back out. He did 2 more songs. It wasn't there. He shouldn't have been back out there. Should not have been back out there.
Oh.
He did 2 more songs, and he just after the second one, he just said, "Guys, I gotta go. I'm sorry."
Yeah.
And then he walked off stage. So his team issued a statement, that he did suffer from heat exhaustion, apologized. So he ended up doing probably a little bit more than half of his set. And we were all really concerned. But again, everybody was there in this festival mode of, we love music, we love these artists. And so nobody really complained about it. It was like, well, I hope he's okay.
Right.
And
right.
then we migrated to the next thing. But that was very strange to be in the audience for that. I was,
Sure.
I was very concerned for a few minutes, but otherwise, oh man, such Allison Russell live, who we actually, today on the show are talking to Kaia Kater, who is a fellow Canadian, and Allison actually makes an appearance on her album. She was phenomenal. Turnpike Troubadours, phenomenal. I'm not a huge Noah Kahn guy or a huge Hozier guy, but both were great. I stayed for a couple songs of each one of them. I didn't stay for the whole thing. Noah Kahn was the last one on Saturday, and we were exhausted.
Yeah.
But I promised Katie I would stay and watch Noah Kahn for a little while, and I did. But yeah, I couldn't. I mean, I'm just telling you. And the Red Clay Strays were unfortunately on the small stage because apparently they made the schedule before the Red Clay Strays blew up.
Right.
So
everywhere right now.
There's an aerial shot that my friend Pat Younger, who I recommended on Pickin the Grinnin not long ago, he posted on Instagram or Facebook or something. There's an aerial shot from a drone that shows that tent and the overage during Red Clay Strays, and they should have been on the big stage.
Yeah,
it was huge.
Wow.
But they were fantastic. Karen and I didn't make it under the tent part, but we were in the back a little bit outside. We could see them and hear them just fine.
Oh,
and God, it was such a great show. I'm going to be talking about Railbird 2024 for a long damn time. It was a great weekend.
Well, I'm very happy to hear that. It looked like it from your pictures. Even when you guys were in your rain ponchos and looking all soggy, you were still smiling, and it looked like a good time. I have to ask about Counting Crows. Did you see their set?
I did, and I gotta tell you, I didn't dislike Counting Crows, but I was never a big Counting Crows fan. I like their music when it comes on the radio. I'm like, oh, that's a good song. I like that.
Yeah,
they were really good.
So
I was impressed.
Okay, and the reason I'm asking is because back in the 90s, like late 90s, early 2000s, I saw Counting Crows a couple of times, and I said, I'm not going to go see them anymore. And I'm wondering if they're still doing what they were doing then, which was changing up the way their popular songs sound so that the audience can't sing along.
No, they didn't do that.
Okay.
No, this was very much a bunch of middle-aged guys playing their hits to make the crowd happy. And Adam is a very animated lead singer. Like he's into it. He's telling you the story. His facial expressions, his gestures and everything are part of the storytelling. And I thought that I was really kind of captivated by him. I thought he was really good. I thought they were really good. They sounded good. And I was impressed. They looked like, a bunch of middle-aged guys. They're old now, or older now.
Yeah.
But they sounded great. Yeah.
Well, that's good. I was annoyed, because this was when their they saw like the first of their major success, right? And Mr. Jones, that's a very identifiable song, and it's got a particular sound, right? And people are going to see this band that they've probably just learned about. Again, I'm talking about the late 90s. And then they're expecting to hear the songs that caught their attention and made them, kind of like this band. And
Sure.
you hear it live and it sounds completely different. And, that was my experience. I think it was twice that I saw Counting Crows and the same thing happened. And not that I wanted to sing along, but it didn't sound the same. I
Sure.
like the songs on the record, the way that they were recorded. And that's how I expect to hear them when I'm paying money to see them live,
Well, sure.
So after that, I said I wasn't going to even try to see Counting Crows anymore. And I'm not trying to take anything away from Adam and the band or anything. I still listen to August and Everything After, like on repeat. I love that album. So it was annoying as a consumer. It was just annoying,
Yeah. Understood. Well, they were very good. They did not do last December because Adam came out and did a duet with Noah Kahn during his set of that song.
Oh, wow. I bet that was great.
Yeah, it was cool. We were leaving at that point, so I didn't actually see it, but I heard it and it sounded great. And then later I left before Noah Kahn brought out Hosier and they did their song
Northern
together.
Attitude.
Yeah, so that was great for the fans there. Again, I'm not a big Noah Kahn guy. I watched a couple songs and then we left because we were exhausted.
Yeah.
And Chris Stapleton, it was my first time seeing him live. I've actually had the honor of meeting him before, but I've never seen him play. And he's just got it. He's dialed in, man. He's at the top of the mountaintop and you can't get much better. The show was amazing. He's just so good. His songs are so good. His band is amazing. It was really funny. Somebody from his high school, Johnson Central High School in Paintsville, Kentucky, held up a sign that said, "Will you sign my JCHS diploma?"
Oh.
And it was probably the second or third song in. He looks down and he goes, "Did you really bring your diploma here for me to sign?" And the kid's like, "Yeah." And he tells security to go get the diploma. They brought the diploma up on stage. He signed it and gave it back to the kid right in the middle of the show. Yeah. Yeah. It was cool.
Man, how awesome.
Cool.
What a thrill that must have been for that kid.
It was a very Kentucky thing to have happen, and it was good. And the other thing, I forgot to tell you this about Dwight. So I'm from Pikeville, Kentucky. I grew up in Pikeville, Kentucky. I moved there when I was 4. I wasn't born there, but I grew up there, and I call it my hometown. Dwight was born in Pikeville, Kentucky. Probably the most thrilling moment for me from the weekend. I got a little emotional too, because it's one of these like hometown pride things.
Sure.
When they introduced him, they said, "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome from Hollywood, California, Dwight Yoakam." And as soon as they said that, Dwight said, "Hell, I ain't from Hollywood, California. I'm from Pikeville, Kentucky." And then as he introduced several of his old songs, like Reading Right and Route 23, he was like, I'm from Pikeville, Kentucky, and, grew up all along Route 23 in Eastern Kentucky, and there's Prestonsburg, and the old road, you had to go through Blaine to get there because it turned off at Hazard. He was talking about all these things that the Kentuckians in the crowd knew. And It was just a really cool connection with him and the people who know where he's from, like me. And I got like teary eyed thinking, man, he's proud of being where I'm from too. And it was a really cool moment. And
That's
so
special.
I got him screaming, "I'm from Pikeville, Kentucky" on video, which was just fun for me to have. So it was good. Welcome to Roots Music Rambler. She's Frank.
He's Paul.
And we're rambling on through the stories behind the music we love.
Today we have a phenomenal talent who happens to play my favorite instrument. Kaia Kater is here. She has a new album out. It's her first in 6 years, and it's getting rave reviews from Rolling Stone, No Depression, and more. You may have seen her at a Tiny Desk concert on NPR not too long ago. She's also been nominated for a Juno Award, which is like Canada's version of the Grammy.
Yeah, and her new album, by the way, features collaborations and contributions from Allison Russell, Aoife O'Donovan, and the legendary Taj Mahal. So we're talking some heavy hitters are pitching in on this, and we're just really tickled and thrilled to have her on the show. And she's so she's so down to earth and
Yeah.
laid back and fun, and just a really fun conversation. No pretense at all.
Yep.
And so it was a lot of fun to have her on the show.
And it's fun for me to hear and talk about the banjo, my favorite instrument. And I've mentioned before that I played at one time. I was learning to play. And, 2020, we all know what happened. And the whole pandemic just killed whatever creativity I had left. And I put my banjo down and haven't picked it up since. So, and I tell the story in the interview about my son picking up my banjo, and he wanted to tune it, air quotes, and pop the strings. So I need to get it fixed. I need to have somebody string it up because I really would love to play again. I forgot what I was listening to. I had like the satellite radio on, and I think I was listening to North Americana. It's the Canadian station, and a song came on and it was very banjo driven, and I was like, I kind of like got emotional. I'm like, oh my god, it's so pretty, I miss it. So I don't remember what it was though off the top of my head right now, but anyway, it was fun listening to Kaia talk about the banjo, and she's very, very talented.
Also on the show, we're going to do our normal Pickin the Grinnin segment and share our picks for whose music is making us grin. They might be new artists, might be old, but they'll sure be good. Before we kick it all off, though, I wanted to ask Francesca about an article she was talking about before we started recording about the 12 highest grossing live music acts. So fill us in on that article and the conversation you had around it there, Frank.
So it wasn't really an article. It was just one of those things like people post on Facebook. Like here, and this is what's written on it. These are 12 of the highest grossing live music acts of all time. How many have you seen in concert? So the list is U2, Rolling Stones, Elton John, Taylor Swift, Bruce Springsteen, Coldplay, Madonna, Beyonce, Celine Dion, Eagles, Paul McCartney, and Billy Joel. So the person I know that posted this said that she has seen 8 of these acts. And then somebody commented and said, I think I've seen like one of them. And the OP said something along the lines of, oh, you need to go see more concerts. And I'm thinking, I've seen 3 of these acts, right? One of them being U2, and I've actually seen them twice. And the other ones are Rolling Stones. And I honestly, the only reason I went to that show was because they played on campus at Michigan State. When I was a student there, they played the football stadium. And then the other one is Bruce Springsteen. And I've talked about Bruce a bunch on the show and what his music, especially the Born in the USA album, means to me. And I finally got to see him when I was like 30, right? So it was a big deal for me to go see him. But it got me thinking, like, I may have not seen many of these 12 of the highest grossing live music acts, but I go to a lot of shows, right?
Yep.
And I would much rather nothing, and I'm not taking anything away from any of the acts that are listed, but I would much rather spend maybe 40, $50 for a general admission ticket in a small venue to see, maybe up and coming acts or artists and creators that a lot of people have never even heard of and probably never will, because to me, again, not taking anything away from those big names, to me, I think that it's even more like genuine, like when we saw Hermanos Gutierrez a couple of weeks ago. I mean, maybe they were just, laying on the Latin love a little bit too thick, but every time, after every song, they're like, oh, thank you very much. And, they were just very appreciative, the namaste, all that stuff. So, it just seemed a little more genuine. I'm not saying Billy Joel and Elton John aren't appreciative, but for me, as a consumer, I would rather spend my money to go to a bunch of little shows like that at small venues than pay hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars to see these acts. I mean, I think ticket prices in general are just ridiculous. And then the whole resale market is obnoxious and obscene. So yeah, it just I saw that like first thing this morning when I woke up and grabbed my phone and opened up Facebook, and it kind of just got me thinking a little bit.
Gotcha. Well, I haven't seen any of the 12 and don't know that any of the 12 appeal to me in terms of I would go stand in line for tickets or I want to go to fight a big arena crowd to see them either.
Exactly.
And I think that's really kind of the almost the root purpose behind this show is to help people understand and discover those emerging artists that you would rather go see with 150 other people in a small club, general admission, where you're going to pay less than 30 or 40 bucks to get in. We could certainly sit here and talk about the Americana headliners, the Jason Isbell and the 400 unit, the drive-by truckers and all those people all day, every day. But what purpose are we serving if we're not bringing someone like Kaia Kater to the table and talking about, hey, here's a young lady who's super talented. And if you can find her and get in on seeing a show soon, you should. A few days after we're recording this, she's playing at a small venue in the middle of a Saturday in Frankfort, Kentucky, which is 45 minutes from my house. And I want people to know about it. Now, obviously, we don't do this show in a way that we publish every week or publish every day or anything like that, so that we're not a news gathering organization. We're not doing timely stuff here. But I want our audience to discover the types of acts that you were just describing that we're going to go see in a local bar or a small venue. Yeah, I've been to the big arena shows and I've seen some big acts in even stadiums. I mean, one of the first major concerts I ever went to, which I'm surprised, this wasn't on the list, although he's no longer living, was I went to see the Jacksons Victory Tour.
Oh, yeah.
And so I saw Michael Jackson actually moonwalk in front of my very eyes.
Oh, my gosh.
It was in 1985, I think it was, maybe. 85 or 86. So I was very young, but I've been in those situations and there's the parking's terrible. It's too crowded. That my daughter's experiencing the same thing now, wanting to go to Taylor Swift shows, which are at sold out football stadiums. But there's just something to be said for, and this is something that I'll always cherish with my daughter. I took her a year and a half ago to a small venue, probably, I don't know, 600 or 700 people maybe, in Nashville to see Gracie Abrams, who is her favorite. And the fact that I was there with her is just a cool thing. Gracie may wind up being the next Taylor and huge and doing, stadiums and arenas. She may not, but if she does, then we have that sort of, shared experience at a smaller venue. And it was much more intimate and whatnot. And I mean, I wasn't even in the crowd. Like I sat back in the ride share room with the parents.
Yeah.
We drove everybody there, but we weren't really interested in seeing the act. But I sat all the way back in the bar waiting on the show to be over, and I could still see and, experience the concert there. So those smaller venues are much more valuable. And so, I mean, of those acts, I think my mother in her older age has treated herself to seeing Elton John and Billy Joel, I think together. And then my brother and sister and I, for Christmas one year, sent her to see Elton John on his last tour, his farewell tour. And she's probably seen maybe one or two of those others throughout her life. But you're talking about acts that you can't see in an intimate setting anymore. It just doesn't happen. You're going to have to go to an arena to see those folks. And there's something missing from those experiences, I think.
Agreed. And I mean, don't get me wrong. We're going to be seeing Tyler Childers next week in a big arena. And while I'm very much looking forward to it, I already know not to expect the experience to be the same as it was the first few times I saw him, and much smaller. I mean, much smaller. The first time I ever saw him was at Shuba's in Chicago, and that music room is about as big as the room I'm in right now, in my basement. So, here he's playing the United Center in Chicago. And while I know it will be fantastic because that's how talented Tyler is, and S.G. Goodman, the opener, I know that it's going to be a whole different experience.
Yeah. We're not getting any Kermit the Frog either, I wouldn't think.
Yeah, probably not.
That's the way that goes. We're sipping on a bourbon and I'm out, so we're going to take a quick break for a refill. Take a moment, if you will, and listen to more about the awesome sponsors that help make this show happen, including Musk Ox flannels. They're buttery soft and built like a tank. You got to get you some of these Musk Ox flannels, kids. Go to gomuskox.com/Rambler and then use the code Rambler, all caps, Rambler. You're going to get a discount. $10 of every $100 purchase goes to conservation efforts to save the muskox up in the Great White North and the Alaskas, and where it's really freaking cold and muskox live. But the flannels are amazing, and they're soft, and they're good looking, and they've got all kinds of different sizes and even different weights for different times of the year. Go muskox.com/Rambler. Use the code Rambler, and you'll get a discount. When we come back, one of the hottest new artists in the Americana genre, Kaia Kater, is with us to talk about her new album, Black Artists in Country and Bluegrass Music, and a lot more. Don't go away. This is Roots Music Rambler.
Hey, Ramblers, I have experienced a revolution in sound in my house, and you can too. The revolution is driven by Sonos. The Sonos wireless music system lets you play any song in any room, control it all with the Sonos app on your phone or tablet. Sonos has all the connections to give you millions of songs and stations, including connecting to your iTunes, your Spotify, Pandora, and more. Get a wireless Sonos player and hear the sound quality difference. Then get one for all the rooms in your house where you listen, but might be out of reach of the stereo or Bluetooth speaker you normally use. So I've got one in my bedroom and bathroom for when I get ready in the morning. I've got one in the kitchen and living room for when I'm hanging out with friends. And then down here in the office den for when I'm working or setting up for another episode of the show. I happen to like the Sonos Move, which is one of the speaker models. I can put it out on my patio for cookouts. It's a weather-resistant design, has an 11-hour battery life, so I don't need to plug it in out there when I have people over for cookouts or tailgates or whatever. And I can play music on all or just a few of the speakers, so I never lose my jams going from room to room. Try the Move and hear the difference, then hook up all the rooms in your house for an excellent listening experience while you move around cleaning or dancing or whatever you do in the privacy of your own home. Listen to Roots Music Rambler on it, for God's sakes. It makes me sound even more handsome. Go to rootsmusic.link/Sonos, S-O-N-O-S, rootsmusic.link/Sonos. That'll take you right to the Sonos Move speaker page to purchase. I highly recommend it, and you'll love how much better your music and podcasts sound. Go to rootsmusic.link/Sonos. That's rootsmusic.link/Sonos.
Tectonic plates stacked in your sink. Your body's a country, burdensome to live in. The sticking, ticking of time. Screw top wine, you turn 29 at midnight.
That is a cut called In Montreal, hot off the new album from Kaia Kater, who joins us on Roots Music Rambler. Hey, Kaia, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on the show, Jason.
We're thrilled to have you. So I picked that cut to start us off because you've got a pretty impressive contributor on that cut who I actually just saw this last weekend live. Tell us about that song and how Allison Russell and all the people came to be on that track with you.
Yeah, that was a fun one to write. You know, I had the lyrics a long time before I had that banjo lick that you hear. It was really just a case of me examining how I felt about my hometown of Montreal, which I was realizing that I left there when I was 8, and then I moved back when I was 18, and then I left again, and then I moved back again when I was 28. So like every 10 years, I like move back for some reason. And so I predict that when I'm 38, I will spontaneously move back. Montreal was voted the capital of, quote, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just trying to figure it out. So, so that's really, every time I've been there, I've just been trying to figure it out. And it sort of serves as this place of reflection. So that's where the song kind of came from. And it was just fun to put these like observations underneath this like really like kind of happy sounding banjo lick. And I immediately knew that I wanted to have Allison's voice on it, not only because she has like this really beautiful kind of like, yeah, like it sounds almost horn like, it's really dulcet, but it'll get you in your feels. And
yeah.
And so I love the texture of her voice and the way that she uses it. But she's also, you know, she's from Montreal and she's written about Montreal before. And so I just felt like it was, you know, it was like the perfect collaboration when I thought about it. It was like, oh, Allie will know, you know, what I'm singing about.
So I'm assuming since you call her Allie, you knew her before.
I did. Yeah. I've known her for a very long time, 10, 15 years, maybe. She's about 10 years older than me. And so I looked at her and her career a lot. I was really impressed. She was one of the first touring mothers that I knew. She was walking around the hallways of a conference called Folk Alliance in Kansas City with her baby. And he was, yes. And so she's always been kind of like an older sibling to me, I guess. And it's been really, really amazing to see her venture out on her own in her solo career and just kill it.
Well, I saw her live 2 days ago as we record this at Railbird in Lexington, Kentucky, and she brought it. I mean, I knew she was going to be fantastic. I didn't know if the Railbird audience, which is leads a little bit more country audience members, I don't know if they knew her, but those who did knew what to expect, and she delivered. She was fantastic. So it was great to finally see her live. All right. So let's pull back a little bit. The album is very different from, I think, your previous work. It's still very banjo heavy, but there's a bigger sound in some of these cuts. You've got Taj Mahal, you've got Aoife O'Donovan on there as well, but the writing seems more intentional with your storytelling. Does that ring true with you?
Yeah, sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
So if you were to analyze and say, here's how this album differs from my previous work, how would you explain that to someone?
It's a lot more cinematic, I would say. I think the style that I've always written in has been just like conjuring like images. Like here's an image, here's another image, here's another image, and trying, sometimes failing, but trying to use them to sort of like build a story or build, you know, like if you look at verse one, it's like a small cube, and then verse 2 is like a bigger cube, and verse 3 is like the biggest cube. And so to have them sort of like accumulate weight as you go into the song. But I think I've always thought really lyrically maybe, and hadn't so much thought melodically, and like how can the listener experience this song? What would help this song come alive, you know? And I think, you know, I went through a film composing program in 2020 through 2022, and that was just such an education on reflecting on every single aspect of how you translate a story to a viewer or listener. All these little choices that you make that can be intentional and that can help the listener kind of get into a certain world that you're creating. And so I learned a ton from directors. I learned a ton from producers, editors. Editors have huge roles. I heard that Star Wars was saved in the edit. I don't know. I'm not a Star Wars fan, but that's what I've heard. And so I think, you know, I realized that albums and like films are a team effort. And so I really reached out as much as I could to my community and to the people who I felt had a skill set to help the songs develop even further, you know.
Nice. Good stuff. So this is going to be a long way to ask a very specific question, but I want to make sure our listeners are aware. For those who don't know by now, you are an artist of color. I believe your father is from Grenada and he immigrated to Canada after the U.S. invasion there in the 80s. Your album and a lot of the interviews I've watched or listened to with you bring needed awareness to the kind of uphill battle that Black artists have in genres like country, bluegrass, and beyond. Would you say this album is a clear stake in that ground, or is it you telling your stories and part of your truth is just part of that journey?
I would say it's probably both. So that might be a little bit of a pageant answer, but I think it is both. Just in the way that I think for my own mental health, I needed to decouple my writing and my artistic choices from the music business. I think it was just becoming really hard for me. Like every time I wanted to make a musical choice or write a song about something, immediately I thought, well, how is this going to play? What audiences are going to like this? Is this going to be commercially viable? You know, and I think that those are good. Those are like good things to have in your orbit for sure. But it just penetrated this like creative process, and it was just so difficult to come up with anything because it would just be so like halting. Like I would write a verse and then just become too petrified of what it was or wasn't or could be or wouldn't be. And so Strange Medicine was really just about setting that aside. And I think part of that that internal conversation is, well, like me as an artist of color, like what do I have to represent? What am I like as a banjo player, you know, like how do I write something that's that's accessible, that people are going to understand? You know, I think it's just, you are, I think as an artist of color, whatever your intersectional identities are, sometimes you are playing 3D chess with yourself to try to figure out how people are going to interpret it. And are they going to interpret it as like only, you know, like, oh, this is only a Black liturgy, a Black album. This is only this is only that. And I think the thing that I want to do as much as possible is transcend, you know, those definitions through the art. And so I sort of wanted it to be, I wanted people to listen to it and go, whoa, that's really different. I don't know where that belongs. And I also, you know, as a parallel result, have to be okay with people not knowing where it goes.
Yeah.
You know,
that's true. I love that answer. And I definitely feel like from my reflection on the album, it certainly fits there in that space of, I don't want to put a label on this, not just from a social standpoint, but also from a musical standpoint. You know, it's got, I think a depth to the songs, have a depth to them that is not something that you can just say, oh, that's bluegrass, or, oh, that's this or that. It's that. It's a very cross genre experience, I think. At least it was for me. I want to go to break with the first single off of this album. It's called The Witch, and I think it was very intentionally pointed at the treatment of women, particularly Black women, through the years, right? Tell us about the song and what you hope people get out of The Witch.
Oh, well, you know, number one, it's a spooky song. I love a good spooky song. It's not spooky season, you know, until we hit like September and October, but I think it's still a good one. And I just wanted to write a good old like revenge song, maybe in the style of, you know, what is that Carrie Underwood song? Or I dug my keys into the back of that little suit. Yeah, I think there's like a cool legacy of women writing songs that they kind of portray them in maybe like not so much of an evolved, peaceful, feminine light, you know? And so I think with The Witch, I was reading a lot of Nathaniel Hawthorne, and I was watching the remake of the movie Macbeth, and just thinking about the power that witches have in society, and also the ways in which women have been labeled as temptresses and harlots, and just kind of playing with that. And then obviously acknowledging that Tituba was the first Black woman she was one of the first women, period. She was a Black woman who was killed during the Salem witch trials. And so I definitely took inspiration from her and tried to think of her character while I was weaving in some other stuff in there.
Now I took a Louisville Slugger to both headlights in my head, and I'm not going to be able to get that out for a while, but that's okay. There's nothing like a good revenge song. There's a couple. I don't know if you've ever heard the song Intentional Heartache from Dwight Yoakam, but it's odd coming from him because he's a dyed-in-the-wool Eastern Kentucky guy, and I am too, by the way. I'm from Eastern Kentucky. I'm actually from the same town he's from. And the reputation, the prejudice against guys from that part of the world is they're jealous, they're possessive, etc. He wrote, and I think he wrote the song Intentional Heartache, which was off his Blame the Vein album. And it's all about this lady who drives across the country to basically take revenge on her ex. And, you know, it talks about taking his favorite clothes and his Dale Jr. poster and spraying it green and running the car into his mom's garden and everything. It's a good revenge song. I'd recommend it if you haven't heard it yet. So while we're talking about Yeah, while we're talking about revenge, let's listen to a bit of The Witch from Kaia Kater. This is featuring Aoife O'Donovan. It's out now as a single off her album Strange Medicine. Don't go away. This is Rich Music Rambler.
I was a storm in a teacup, thickening the water steeped in my anger. And you claim to be the one to understand. Don't you understand? You're not a friend to me, just a stranger grinning like some sick entertainer. Is this the going trend? Oh, pious pilgrim, your temper is bad. You won't tell me how I got here, I don't know where I'm at. Oh, what a vision when I dreamt I moved through you and burned my name into your shit. So they've come to claim me, to play with my patience, to try and possess me. I have to say that I'm fatigued. 6 advisors at a round table, counseling that I may not stay valuable unless I'm writing verses and telling tragic stories. I'm alone on stage with no exit.
That song is Maker Taker from the new album Strange Medicine from Kaia Kater. It's really an excellent album. We've got links to it in the show notes, of course, and we're continuing the conversation with Kaia today on The Big Show. We do want to get into your roots as an artist, Kaia, but let's stay with the theme a bit. What do you think of Beyonce's new album, and how is it helping artists like you knock down some of those obstacles we were referring to, or is it?
Oh, great album. I mean, Beyonce's had a string of really great albums ever since B-Day, not even Lemonade, but that's a great record too. Yeah, Cowboy Carter is a really, really interesting, I think, treatise on what we were just talking about, which is Beyonce saying, you know, this is not a country album, this is a Beyonce album. And especially understanding the backlash and the racism that she faced in 2016 when she performed Daddy Lessons, which is a song of her 2016 album Lemonade, a country song, with the Chicks at the Country Music Awards. And she was very much not welcome in that room. And I think she described it as a negative experience that she had, but I think it was absolutely brutal. And I think speaks to, I've said this before, I think it speaks to like, well, if Beyonce, who's one of the biggest pop stars, read stars of our generation, if she's experiencing that at the Country Music Awards, what are other Black country artists experiencing? And, you know, I consider myself probably country adjacent. I haven't been to the CMAs, but I think that it's a really big deal that there's banjo on this album. It's a really big deal that she's talking about Linda Martell. She's talking about Black legacy women artists who have worked in country music. And I think it's inevitably gonna help us and has been helping us. The only thing that I worry about is, you know, I hope more of us can get through the door and get in the door. Beyonce has a lot of sway and a lot of power, and you know, seen that some radio stations, not all, but some radio stations were kind of, the fans called in and said, you better play this record. Or else they maybe wouldn't have. So I don't know. I feel like the jury is still out, but I'm definitely optimistic.
Sure. And Beyonce playing, you know, doing a country album or country music is one thing. I would imagine growing up in the industry as a banjo player, which puts you, you know, almost more into bluegrass by most people's measure, has to be hard as hell as well. How has your journey as a banjo player of color been in terms of acceptance and challenges?
I grew up going to bluegrass festivals. My mom and I would drive down from Canada to the Gray Fox Bluegrass Festival in Oak Hill, New York. So, and I would go to the Bluegrass Academy there. They had like a little camp for kids called Bluegrass Academy, and you would you would play like Boil 'em Cabbage Down on your little fiddle, and then you would get on stage. And so there was, I think a community, especially for me as a kid around bluegrass. I think the thing that pulled me towards old time music and the clawhammer banjo specifically was I just felt a little bit more accepted there. It's not something that I could, point you towards and say, this is why I went in this direction. But I think I had more access to clawhammer banjo teachers where I lived, and so it just kind of became more of a natural thing. And I also felt I could sing with the clawhammer banjo more than I really could against like a Scruggs roll, like a forward Scruggs roll. But actually, the really interesting thing is I felt like it's really circled back around, and there was like a good 10, 15 years where I was firmly outside of the bluegrass scene. And I just really feel like I've been invited back into it in a really beautiful way. Like, Molly Tuttle invited me to open for her on a couple of her shows and play with her band. And, I just did a show with Brian Sutton, who's an incredible flat pick guitar player from the Blue Ridge Mountains. And he was playing Elizabeth Cotton's music. And so I feel like very much lately there's much more of an open door and like a cross pollination thing, and it doesn't really matter as much. I think it's just about being a nice person and having a passion for what you do. And so I feel much more accepted in the bluegrass community than I would have say in 2004.
Well, that's refreshing to hear. It's certainly something that I think we all hope for, but the reality doesn't always manifest itself. So it's good to hear that. Speaking of banjo players, we talked about your friendship with Allison Russell, and she obviously makes an appearance on your latest album. I'm guessing you've been connected at some point to Rhiannon Giddens, who's a fellow banjo player. Tell us a little bit about, have you made a connection with her? Do you have a relationship with her? And what's it like to watch her do what she's doing, which is in a way similar to what you're doing, both musically and socially?
Yeah. Well, we call her in our little community, we call her Banjo Auntie. She's she's served as definitely the blueprint for sure, and a guide for so many of us, not just me. So many of my friends and colleagues who are Black and who are playing string band music or music influenced by string band music. And I say this all the time. Like I was playing banjo, since I was like 8 or 9, but it wasn't until I saw the Carolina Chocolate Drops, which is Rhiannon's group. It's not until I saw them play in 2006 or 2007 that I really started to understand that the banjo has West African roots and has Black roots. Mm-hmm. So when I started playing, I felt like really like the raisin in the oatmeal. Like, why am I playing this instrument that I have no cultural connection to? But I love the way it sounds and I love the music. And so she helped create those ties for me. And as a result, I kept playing, which is pretty huge. And we're friends. She's a wonderful, wonderful person. She works really, really hard to talk about and accurately represent the banjo's history and the banjo's place within American history. And she really has, like, when I say she's paved the way, I mean, it has been with her blood, sweat, and tears that the rest of us have sort of come along. And so, she's also stayed really connected with so many younger generations coming up and has been really supportive to me and to my friends.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great to hear. Yeah. She's obviously incredibly impressive, both as an artist and certainly as an activist. And I can tell you, in the short time that we've been doing this podcast, I know Francesca and I both learned a lot from her. Sort of advocating for that history and understanding the instrument and its impact and its place in American history. So kudos to her for doing what she's doing. So we've touched on your songwriting a little bit with a couple of the songs I've asked about, but I'd love to know more about where you draw inspiration for your music beyond the lived experience. What else inspires you to write, and how do you put yourself in that mode of writing?
Oh, well, I think lately, I don't know if it's because I've turned 30, but I'm like really into historical figures now. That's just part of that's it. I like candles a lot more. I never used to pay attention to candles, and now I love candles. Can't get enough of them, and historical figures. So I think I take a lot of inspiration from history, from certain misunderstood people. Grenadian history has so many revolutionaries, and the 1979 revolution in Grenada centered around Morris Bishop, and I wrote a lot about him and about my dad in my last record, Grenades. So I think, I think there's something about history that really interests me, and that I feel like has parallels always present. And then otherwise, I mean, I've really tried writing love songs. I think I'm on a mission to write a really good love song, but it's really hard. I think there's so many good love songs that it's like, how do you add one to the canon? Yeah. So sometimes I think I get a little scared of leaning into some of the more common songwriting themes, because I'm like, how do I have a fresh take on this? But I've been challenging myself to try.
Well, that's good. Well, I'm not a songwriter, but I would imagine that the path to writing a good love song is to get hurt a bunch of times. So I don't recommend it, but if you need to for the writing, I guess you can. So there you go. We need to step out for a quick break here, but when we come back, I want to ask some questions about the roots of Kaia, the artist, but also the person. We'll dig into her family a little bit more. Let's go out with Mechanics of the Mind, also from Strange Medicine. This is Roots Music Radio.
In the middle of the colony, she sits by the guillotine, waiting for someone to behead. Maybe she's a part of me, the rage I feel but just can't see, the hooded silhouette. Mechanics of the mind, they wind clockwise. Now she overtakes the crowd, takes the form of a mushroom cloud. The sky is glowing red. Maybe I'm a part of this devil in a sequin dress.
Music Rambler, a little more traditional banjo sound there from an older cut from Kaia Kater called Hangman's Reel. That's from her last album, 9 Pin. We've been talking about her new album, one called Strange Medicine, which is now available everywhere. We'll have links to the show notes, of course. Now, I want to make sure everybody understands that Francesca is going to come in here and ask some questions and join us. She wasn't present for the first two segments of this interview because she had some prior commitments with her education job. But I didn't want everybody to think, man, Jason just hogged all the questions for the first two segments. What a jackass, which I am a jackass sometimes, but I just want to make sure everybody knows that. Yeah. So Kaia, I'll kick it off, and then I'm probably just going to let Francesca geek out with you about the banjo, because I know you both play that. So Kaia, let's talk about your roots, not just as an artist, but as a person. We mentioned your father's from Grenada. You referenced him on a previous album that you talked about a little bit. Tell us how you as a musician, as an artist, came to be and landed on playing roots music, the banjo, and so on.
Well, so I was born in Montreal to definitely like a family of hippies, I would say. My grandfather was he was like he was part of the back to the land movement in the 60s, him and my grandma. And they were very much into Neil Young and Joni Mitchell and Bob Dylan and the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. And so my mom grew up in that. And then we would have these family gatherings where basically kitchen parties where during the holidays we would just all play songs together. And so I think that was kind of like the environment that I was in. My grandfather also built acoustic guitars for a long time. And I played cello, I played piano. I sort of went through the classical zone and just really grabbed onto the banjo. And even when I was playing other instruments that weren't the banjo, it was always like seeing what I could write on them, seeing what I could create, and then also having a love for the traditional music side. And then my mom actually started running folk festivals after that. So she ran the Ottawa Folk Festival and then the Winnipeg Folk Festival. So I was backstage a lot as a tween and teen, and probably obnoxiously asking people for lessons, and they had to say yes because it was like the executive director's daughter, which I feel bad. It's so tyrannical of me, but I have to do some penance for that. Probably teach someone else's kid at a festival. So that's really how I came up, and I ended up going to college to study religion and philosophy in West Virginia, but I was also on a scholarship to play banjo, which continued my education, and made records all through college, and just somehow accidentally graduated into a music career. And I'm still here.
It doesn't sound so accidental though.
That's true. Yeah. I should give myself more credit.
A little bit. Yeah. And you had a lot of, your mom's being the executive director of the Winnipeg Folk Festival. That's a big deal. I've been to Winnipeg, but not for the Folk Festival. I was there in February. Not this year.
Oh, that terrible month. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Well, no, it was planned that way. And it's fine because I do love the winter and cold weather. I'm one of those weird people. So, and I know I'm coming into this interview late. So the banjo was your first instrument? Is that true?
No, it was I would say third. So I started on the piano and then cello and then banjo.
Ah, okay. And then it seems like lately, especially, there's been so much talk about the banjo specifically being a country music instrument. And I think a lot more people are becoming knowledgeable about the roots of the banjo. Right. A lot those not in the know just think, oh, banjo country music from, Appalachia, the holler. But the roots are way deeper and way older than that.
Yeah. It's very, very true. And it's kind of cool. I mean, I think that, we were talking about Rhiannon Giddens earlier. I think she was ready. Like as soon as Texas Hold'em came out with Beyonce, which she plays banjo on, she started this 30 days of banjo thing where she got this huge influx of followers and said, all right, great. Now let's start talking about like the roots of the banjo and where it comes from. And so I think there's a big intentionality that's happening, with the Black Opry, with Beyonce, with Rhiannon to just kind of educate and set the record straight, not in any bombastic way, but just in like, hey, you should know that this is where the banjo comes from, and these are its descendants, and let's keep it pushing. Yeah, which is cool to me.
I am one of those people who, likes to inform others of the origins of the banjo, especially when those people think that they know everything about country music and the instrument and stuff. So, and I think Jason filled you in that I guess played the banjo. I haven't picked it up in some time.
Played?
I know.
Not the past tense.
Right, I know. Well, COVID killed any creativity that I had, and I stopped going to lessons, So it was just, I would love to pick it up and play again. But my son, who is 10, decided he was going to try to tune it not too long ago and busted the strings. So I have to find somebody to string it up for me, and so I can get back into it. So I do love it, and I did enjoy it. So
I hope you get back into it. Were you playing clawhammer style or Scruggs style?
Just Scruggs style. Yeah, I wasn't ready for that.
Cool.
that
Cool.
that yet. No. But I was learning. We learned some Uncle Tupelo songs, and
Nice.
I learned to play "Stand by Me," and I was planning to make that because I know Jason, you're a big fan of originally non-bluegrass songs being turned into bluegrass songs.
Yes.
So that was my thought when I learned "Stand by Me." So maybe I'll.
There you
I
go.
love that song.
So, Kaia, I love that you went from Winnipeg, I believe, to my original home state of West by God, Virginia, to study banjo in college. I believe at Davis and Elkins. I think that's right.
That's right.
I would imagine the banjo part of that experience was amazing, but I would also think that West Virginia has to have been a bit of a culture shock for a Black woman from Canada. Is that fair? And don't worry, you won't offend me here at all. I love that I'm from West Virginia. I don't always love West Virginia. So
it was a big culture shock. I think mainly, I went from being able to drink legally in Canada to being underage. And so it felt like I was just aging backwards. There was some Benjamin Button stuff happening. I think I was definitely so excited to be there and so excited to learn, but everything was different. I mean, the campus culture was different in the US than it had been in Canada. The topography was different. And so, needless to say. So I think it took me a while to get used to it and to figure out where I fit in all of that. And in the midst of that, I learned so much music and I got so much better as a musician. Like it just, I was going to these banjo contests to try to make some extra money because like you could win first place for $500. And I was coming in like 10th and 11th because it was not as easy as I thought it would have been. There were people playing me under the table. And so I was humbled very quickly, which was good for me.
Yeah. There's a lot of people don't understand that you could go up in any holler in West Virginia or Kentucky or probably Tennessee, North Carolina as well, Western Virginia, and find 10 people who are as talented as the best pickers in the world.
Exactly.
Who just don't have the aspiration to be a recording artist or a musician or anything. They just like sitting on their front porch picking. And so you can drive up a holler somewhere and if you're brave enough and learn something. So it's good stuff.
Yeah.
So and like I said, look at you now. You're on tour supporting your new album. It's got some big names.
Yes.
So can you tell us more about that and where you hope this one takes you?
Oh, I've been thinking about that a lot. I think, when I made it, it was the thick of COVID. And so I kind of had to let go of a lot of expectations as to where this was going to go. And so I feel way more on this record than others, that I'm kind of along for the ride. And that's proven to be, the good times and the hard times. It's been 6 years since I've made a record and things have really changed. And I think so many independent artists are trying to figure out how to make it work financially and how to find the audience that's right for them. And I very much feel like I'm on that path. But I'm so passionate about the music and I love the music, and that's my grounding element. It's just so fun to play the music and the songs from Strange Medicine.
Well, we're awfully tickled you came by to spend some time with us. We hope the new album goes bonkers and we're seeing you headline some of these big festivals soon. Thank you so much for your music and for your time. We're very honored to have you here. Ladies and gentlemen, she is Kaia Kater. The new album is called Strange Medicine. Links are in the show notes. Let's go out with another older tune, though. This one is, I think, more of a tribute to Kaia's roots. It's from the 9-pin album and called Fine Times at Our House. Pickin the Grinnin is next. Don't go away. This is Roots Music Rambler. Welcome back to Roots Music Rambler. How about that Kaia Kater, man? You just got to
She's darling.
go check her music out. Go watch some YouTube interviews with her. She's fascinating. She's brilliant, and man, her music's awesome. So we were tickled to have her on the show, and I can't imagine within short order she's going to be a huge star in at least the bluegrass field, if not Americana music overall. She's got the total package. She's brilliant. She's talented. She's a great songwriter. She's a great performer, and she's riding the wave right now, which is great. Yeah, sweet gal. It's great.
Yeah, she's a sweetheart, and she's darling. There's so much to love about her.
So much, including the fact that she plays the banjo, which is Frank's favorite instrument.
There you go.
There you go. It is time for Pickin the Grinnin. In addition, obviously, to Kaia Kater, who we have picked for you and you've heard from to go listen to if you haven't already. But this is the part of the program where Frank and I share our picks for who is or are making us grin. As we listen to music, it might be an album, it might be a song, it might be an artist, they might be new and you have never heard of them. It might be somebody old that we're bringing back up for you to revisit. But whatever the case may be, it's good music that we think you ought to check out. And so I will jump in and go first, as I often do not do.
Okay.
To give Frank a couple seconds to come up with her pick this week.
I'm prepared.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna share one of the artists I saw at Railbird, and I had never seen or heard of her. I guess I'd seen her name, so technically I had heard of her, but I hadn't listened to her music. Okay. And I swung by the Burl stage, which was the smaller stage, for her set. She came out, and she had a nice little following there, good crowd. She had a lot of energy, and she kind of blew the roof off the joint for a few minutes, which was amazing. And her name is Katie Pruitt. She's a singer-songwriter from Georgia. She plays a mean guitar. And she's got a relatively new album out, I think, called Mantras, maybe. But anyway, she impressed me. She's from Georgia. I believe she is an openly queer artist, and a lot of her songwriting is based in obviously her experiences being queer in the Christian South. Not that every song is about that, but man, she can just flat play. She really impressed me with her stage presence and her guitar playing. And she had that crowd worked up into a lather. So Katie Pruitt, I immediately texted my daughter and said, you need to check out Katie Pruitt because I think you would really like her.
Yeah.
For a lot of reasons, music being the primary one. So Katie Pruitt's my pick this week. What about you?
All right. Well, my Pickin the Grinnin is not anyone new, but it's sort of like maybe like a whole era.
Okay.
Here's the backstory. So I was in the car, and you all, if you've been listening for any length of time, know that Jason has a daughter, Katie, who's a teen, and I have a daughter, also a teen. Okay. So the teen and I were in the car, probably going to school or whatever, and a song was playing on satellite radio, and I forget who it was, but it said featuring Fiona Apple. So my child said, I don't see what the big deal is about Fiona Apple. Like, I never liked her, like I tried listening to her and I don't get it. And I'm like thinking to myself, challenge accepted. Right. So, so I grabbed my phone, and as I'm driving, and no, I wasn't driving. Nope. I'm not looking up things on Spotify while I'm driving. Never. So I pulled up, and I mean, arguably her most known song, Criminal, which I don't care how popular it is or mainstream it is. It's a straight up jam, right?
Yep.
So I'm like, okay, so you know this song? And she's like, yeah. And she's like, it doesn't do it for me. I'm like, okay. So I said, well, guess what? Now I'm going to school you about late 90s chick rock, right? So
we're going to Lilith Fair, baby.
That's what Tom said. He's like, it's like Lilith Fair. Because he was that's right. Tom was in the backseat. He's like, it's like Lilith Fair up in here. So then I played Tracy Bonham, the song Mother, Mother, which always makes me grin because, and I've talked about my sister Felicia before, how she and I would always sing together. She definitely has the better, more dominant voice, but we would sing together and record ourselves on cassette tapes because that's how old we are. And one of the songs we liked to sing together was Mother, Mother. But the problem was we could not. So the problem with singing Mother, Mother is that when we get to the part where Tracy Bonham starts screaming, everything's fine, my sister and I would crack up. We would just crack up, like laughing, and then we'd have to start over. And it was just ridiculous. We were crazy. And then the last one I played was appropriately My Sister by Juliana Hatfield. And that was another one that my sister and I used to sing together. And, sisters, you get it, right? Like My Sister. And how can you not love a song that starts out with I hate my sister. She's such a bitch.
Love it.
So there you go.
There you go. That's good stuff. The whole 90s chick rock thing, that was before I was mature enough to feel self-confident enough in my masculinity to care for the chick rock. So I missed being excited about it then, but I have started to migrate back and pick up. Alanis Morissette was the only one that I would put in the category of I really liked her. Yeah. And because her album just was a banger, it just rocked. But I got really turned off at Sarah McLachlan was the one who made me go, I don't want to listen to this. It was the Arms of a Stranger song that just got overplayed and overdone. And it just, to me, it sounded like somebody just whining the whole time. And I was very down on chick rock for a while, with a couple of exceptions, but I have since gone back and started paying closer attention to the lyrics and listening to the songs from a different perspective. And I'm glad I have, because there's a lot of great music there that I just ignored for a long time.
For sure. So, well, good. I'm glad.
Well, I'm glad you took your daughter to school on Miss Fiona Apple and others, because that's good stuff. Cool. All right. Well, we've taken everybody to school today on a bunch of different things, and we're very appreciative that you've joined us for the big program. Be sure to jump over to rootsmusicrambler.com. Leave us some feedback. We also have a store. If you like the show, you get a hat, you get a t-shirt, we got stickers. We got them stickers. I love them stickers now. And so you can support the show that way. But we appreciate you being here. It's always good to have some folks listen and giving us feedback. Roots Music Rambler is a production of Falls & Partners, copyright 2024. Our theme music is Sheepskin and Beeswax by Gentacorum. Join us online at rootsmusicrambler.com and make sure you mash that subscribe or follow button so you remember to join us for the next Hoe-Down and Throwdown. She's Frank.
He's Falls.
And whatever you do, kids, ramble on.